God provides when we lovingly share with each other. And that's what hospitality is all about. Sharing, yes, but sharing with the idea of love. That this is all I have, and now I'm giving it to you so that we can share. Share in the gospel, share in the good news of Jesus Christ, and share just in Christian love. How do we know that we have this gift unless we can go the extra effort in order to find it? And this is another story from my past, and I call this the hospitality of Jim Kowalczyk. When I was kind of a brand new deacon, and I was still working in the engineering office over in Clearfield for PennDOT, thank you very much. I used to walk over to the mall. That was, Denny remembers this. This was the mall walk. There was a lot of people at lunch break would just walk over to the mall and just kind of walk around, get a little exercise in the wintertime. And I just happened to see this fellow from my church. His name's Jim Kowalczyk. Well, at the time, I barely knew what his name was because I had seen him at church many, many times. He hadn't been to our church for very long. It was only for a few years. I think he had retired not too long before that from the railroad. And I started seeing him come to church, and I could tell that he was a Marine Corps guy. He had the flat top haircut, gray hair, tattoos, sleeves rolled, t-shirt sleeves in church rolled. In the summertime he had shorts on. And he stood there stoically in church. And he looked like just about the gruffest guy and the meanest guy you could think of. Marine Corps. Never once did I ever see him come to communion, and I thought to myself, just as the Pharisee probably thought to himself when he saw that woman come with the alabaster jar of oil, who's this guy think he is? Why does he even come to our church? He doesn't come to communion. Who is this guy? He doesn't talk to anyone. He seems like he's the meanest guy in the world. Well, jump ahead a year or two, and I'm taking my walk, my daily stress walk, I guess, because, our job at PennDOT is so stressful. And I go around the corner of Ollie's, and I see Jim standing there with his wife. And he's kind of pushing the cart. Well, I guess I'm going to have to say hi. Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Kowalczyk, how are you? Fine. Okay, good to see you. And I walked around the corner. And I thought to myself, boy, can't even get a hello. Can't even get a greeting out of this guy. Can't even get a handshake. And then I heard the cart. Shh, around the corner. Hey, you're that deacon guy from the church, aren't you? Oh, I guess you didn't recognize me. Yeah, I am. I am. Nice to meet you. I'm Luke. Nice to meet you too. Hey, I got a question for you. What's your question, Jim? How do I go about being baptized? Yeah, jaw drop. Jim, you've never been baptized? No. And he said, my dad was a Byzantine Catholic, but my mom, I can't remember which it was, but one parent was Catholic, one parent was nothing. Never baptized. Ding, 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 ding. No wonder he doesn't come to communion. No wonder he feels uncomfortable by putting himself out in this church full of hunkies. No wonder. So I said, Jim, let me talk to Father, and I'll get right back to you. I'll see you in church Sunday, won't I? Yeah, I'll be there. Yeah, now I know. You will be there. You will be there. Whether I'm there spiritually, mentally, or not, I know you'll be there. You must love it. So I talked to Father, and I said, hey, that wasn't even part of the story. I'm sorry, I almost forgot something else. He said, I want to get baptized. He told me the story of his mom and dad. I just found out that I have Alzheimer's disease, and I don't know how long I'm going to be able to get this done. I said, okay, I'll talk to Father this week. I'll see you at church. Perfect. I said, Jim, I talked to Father. He said that I can help you out on this journey. I can teach you whatever you want to be taught. Just tell me how you want to do it. Come to my house. I met the most gracious and, believe it or not, gregarious character who had a little bit in common with me because I was a soldier, he was a Marine. A guy who wanted to tell me all about his work, about his life, about his daughters, about the caves that he used to explore outside of his home. We got to be fairly good friends in a short time. I got to learn an awful lot about him. And I got to share an awful lot of pie and snacks that his wife would prepare for me while I was there. Just oozing, brimming with hospitality, and something that he put himself on the line at our church, and something that I wasn't willing to put myself on the line for, to get to learn about this man. And my heart aches. He passed away last year, and my heart aches for not having to see him anymore. And just, be aware of his presence and what he meant to me in my life through his hospitality. Now, how have others in my church been impacted? And thinking about this, think about how others in your churches have been impacted by this charism. This charism that we all share a thread of, one piece of this cloth of charism of hospitality that each of us share. Not everyone can do everything. I've found that out in the past 10 years. Not one person can do everything. But as a tapestry of hospitality, each of us with our gifts can weave hospitality in our churches. Well, there's 8 of us from our church right here. And I think that speaks a lot for our church. Not to pat anyone on the back or anything like that. But, we have a church that has grown in the past few years. Grown a great deal, I think. Before I get into any more of that, I did want to cover one more little subject here. The charism of hospitality empowers a Christian to be generous, to be a generous channel of God's love by warmly welcoming and caring for those in need of food and of shelter, and especially of friendship. Now, I'm sure that all of us can think of ideas within our own churches where we try to do a very, very good job of showing hospitality. One of the first things that I thought of when I thought of hospitality and how we do it in our Ruthenian, Byzantine, Catholic Archeparchy of Pittsburgh is through the Byzantine Sarah Club. Members of the Sarah Club show tremendous hospitality to our seminarians by greeting them, by being friends with them, by pairing up with them, by having dinners for them, and by helping them become better seminarians and better pastors. But what else do we have at our churches? Who has a coffee clatch? Well, maybe you don't call it a coffee clatch, but if you've ever had Father Bob Carl as a pastor at your church, you know it's called a coffee clatch. We have a coffee clatch. That's something that our church has been doing ever since I started going there back in 1991 or whatever it was. Coffee clatches. How many churches, or how many of you, as part of your church or on behalf of your church, volunteer at a food pantry? That's something that we do at least twice a year, is collect food for needy people. How many people have taken part in any of the Eastern pro-life, what's the word I'm looking for? The things that they put on. March for Life. There's a big one right there. How many people have attended that down in Washington, D.C.? The March for Life. Big deal. Eastern pro-life. Something that we do in our town, for many of us who don't necessarily get down to Washington, D.C. in the middle of a snowstorm because we can't. The October 1st life chain. Yeah, that's what I wanted to think of. The life chain. How many communities have a life chain where you can stand for an hour and pray in your community? That's something that we have up in our area of Jefferson and Clearfield County. How many people here are members or know that their parish has a Bethany ministry? Ministering to people who are sick. Ministering to people who have lost loved ones. I'm sure all of us, we talked about the pierogi, a parasocial committee. Home visitation volunteers. How many people are ushers or greeters in their church? Do our churches have hospitality committees or welcoming committees? Or how many people have taken part in this one, Meals on Wheels? You ever heard of that one before? Meals on Wheels? That was something I used to do with my mom when I was just little. Delivering meals to people who are shut in. A hot meal, something they don't have to prepare themselves, but a hot meal delivered to them. This is from the rule of St. Benedict. All guests to the monastery should be welcomed. as Christ, because he will say, I was a stranger, and you took me in. The rule of St. Benedict. Now, back to something that's been going on in my church that I've noticed over the past several years. And I want to say that this kind of started with probably Father Bob Yesko of blessed memory, and was carried on in a completely different way, but the same idea of hospitality, Father Bob Carl. And now we have this new and wonderful priest and family that came to us directly from the Ukraine, Father Vasil Bonik. I think the two pastors that came before him helped us in a great way of becoming very, very gifted in the charism or the charisms that it takes to have hospitality in our church. Like I said, I've got 8 of us here from our church right now, and if you ask them during a break or during lunch, what do you think made this happen? You can ask them. They might give you answers. They're all sitting here at the second table. Not to put them on the spot or anything like that, but you want to talk mother-in-law jokes, well, there she is. I can't take any mother-in-law jokes. No. I have a few, but I can't sit down. We've had in our parish over the past year a tremendous influx of families, one being this priest and his family and their 2 beautiful little kids. But we've also had several families that have come from quite a distance to become members of our church. All in all, within the past year, of brand new members, not members being born into our church, but brand new children in our church, 18 new children. And it's kind of a nice thing. We had 30 kids in our ECF program, now we've got 50. And we're blessed. We are very blessed. By luck? I don't know. But it's something that we need to be able to hold on to, isn't it? Something that we need to work in order to hold on to. Sister Marion kind of prompted me to ask a few questions of these new families. And here are some of the interesting parts of the responses that I got when talking to them. What attracted you to this church? What attracted you to this church? Well, because there were a lot of young children involved, and we already had 30 kids at our church to begin with. That was one of the first things that did attract them to our church, was the fact that we had an active ECF program and that we had a lot of kids. But we got to hold on. We can't just leave it at that. We can't say, okay, we got lots of kids, come to our church. There's got to be something that holds these families here. The second question kind of goes hand in hand with the first. Who told you about this church? Well, they were attending different churches throughout the area, and they just happened to bump into another family that's got 5 kids from our church. Bumped into them at a church a few miles away, and they said, wow, this is kind of nice. It was a Byzantine church. This is kind of nice, a Byzantine family. He said, where did you guys come from? Well, we came from the church down in Sykesville. And so they kind of came and saw. They followed, they came and they saw what we had, and they saw that we had a bunch of kids. But again, on its face, having a bunch of kids isn't enough. There has to be a little bit more. What kind of support do you seek from this parish community? The most interesting answer I got was from one of the fathers of a family with 5 children. He said, when I came to your church, I didn't feel like my family was going to be a burden on your church, to scramble to find new teachers, to welcome this new family. It didn't seem like you were a burden, and I thought, my goodness, you didn't seem like you were a burden. Hospitality, again, freely given with love, and with no expectation of any kind of a return. The last question is, how can we help you grow in your spiritual life? And what I was told by one of the mothers was, make us a part of your family. Don't let hospitality just be a show that you put on. It's not just about having kids. It's about integrating these families into our parish life, showing that kind of hospitality that's sustainable, generous, cordial, and sustainable. something that can last through ages to ages. And those are very, very interesting questions and very interesting answers. These families have meant a lot to our church. I was talking a little bit earlier today. Our church seems very, very alive, especially during the Divine Liturgy. Ask any of these 7 sitting back here. It's alive. And anytime that I have the opportunity to preach, I know that it's alive because sometimes I have to say wisdom. It's been a very, very wonderful experience for us, but it's something that we wish very, very dearly to hold on to. The last thing that I want to leave you with here is one final reading, and this one is from Hebrews. Well, I won't even look it up because I have it written down right here. Hebrews 13:2. And you'll understand this. You've heard it before. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing that, some have entertained angels without knowing it. It goes along with the rule of St. Benedict. We don't know who we're bumping into on the street. I had no idea who I was bumping into when I went down to Ollie's that afternoon and saw Jim Kowalczyk. I had no idea. And my jaw dropped when I found out who it was. He was an angel to me. And I hope that he's still praying for me up in heaven right now. I had no idea 15 years ago who I was bumping into when I saw Craniac over there in Ohio. Maybe he was an angel. Maybe I was an angel to him. I don't know. I don't know. But that short interaction that we had, which was left very, very well, because we both had a good laugh after I said my name's Crawfordovich. Yeah, that was a good one. And he kind of laughed about that. He looked at me funny at first, but he laughed. And I think we had an understanding that we share in this gift, this special gift that all of us have a piece of, and that's hospitality. I thank you very, very much